بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على أشرف الأنبياء والمرسلين سيدنا ونبينا ومولانا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين. The previous lesson was abruptly cut off, but nevertheless the lesson was trimmed and it was made to terminate just before this paragraph where Hafiz ibn Hajar rahmallah discusses his reason for writing. So we already read the entire paragraph. Basically, Hafiz ibn Hajar rahmallah gives a brief overview on what led him to initially write Nukhbatul Fikr, and thereafter he explains why he wrote Nuzha an-Naḍar. He mentions that a brother requested him to write something in brief. After compiling it in just a few pages, that brother then again asked if he could write an explanation. So Hafiz ibn Hajar rahmallah again complied to his request. In writing this, he had two main objectives. So the first was to rearrange the sequence and present the terms and principles in a better order. And the second was to add more benefits that were not found in previous works. So this was a valid reason for Hafiz ibn Hajar rahmallah to add another book to the science, despite just admitting that the book of Allama ibn Salah rahimahullah was so widely accepted. He mentions all of this in the text below by saying, فسألني بعض الإخوان أن ألخص له المهم من ذلك. A brother requested that I summarize for him the important points from that. He uses the word sa'ala. Sa'ala is used when an inferior person makes a request to someone superior. In Natijatul Afkar, Allama Munawi rahmallah said, وَأَصْلُهُ طَلَبُ الْأَدْنَى مِنَ الْأَعْلَى. Its basis is when someone lower asks from someone higher. Therefore, it comes in verse 108 of Surah Al-Baqarah, أَمْ تُرِيدُونَ أَن تَسْأَلُوا رَسُولَكُمْ كَمَا سُئِلَ مُوسَى مِن قَبْلِ. And in verse 186 it comes, وَإِذَا سَأَلَكَ عِبَادِي عَنِّي فَإِنِّي قَرِيبٌ. So obviously those that were asking the Prophet ﷺ, they were inferior to him. You get another word, and that is iltamasa. Iltamasa is used when someone superior requests from someone who is inferior. In Sahih al-Bukhari there is a narration عن أنس بن مالك رضي الله عنه أنه قال رأيت رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم وحانت صلاة العصر فالتمس الوضوء. Anas رضي الله عنه, he says that I saw the Prophet صلى الله عليه وسلم, and the time of Asr set in, and he requested. So you can see he uses the word iltamasa. He requested for water to perform the ablution. If you are reading commentaries, then this differs with what Allama al-Qani rahmallah said in Qada'ul Watar, but we have just presented a few proofs on what we mentioned. Since Hafiz ibn Hajar rahmallah uses the word sa'ala, it indicates that either it was one of Hafiz ibn Hajar rahmallah's students who was asking, or probably it was a colleague of his that requested him to summarize these important points. Hence, Hafiz ibn Hajar rahmallah even describes him by saying بَعْضُ الْإِخْوَانِ, that some of my brothers, and you translate it as one brother. This does not refer to a brother in lineage, rather it is metaphorically used for a companion or a student. A person uses this term for someone who is equal or younger, and not for someone who is regarded as his superior. As for exactly which student it was, it could either be Izz ibn Jama'ah, or it could possibly be Shamsuddin Muhammad ibn Abdul Samad al-Zarkashi. If it was the latter, then he passed away 1 year after Nukhbah was written, as Nukhbatul Fikr, the original text, was written in 812. So probably after that he asked Hafiz ibn Hajar rahimahullah, and to elaborate a bit more as it will come later on, but he passed away in the year 813 Hijri. So he said, what did he ask? An ulakhisa, that I summarize. This is derived from the word talkhis, and it means istifa'ul maqasid bilafdhin mujiz ma'a tabyini lafdhan wa ma'nan, to mention all the integral points of something in concise words but with absolute clarity. So Ibn Hajar rahmallah said, فَلَخَّصْتُهُ فِي أَوْرَاقٍ لَطِيفَةٍ. I condensed it in a few pages. Now here Hafiz Ibn Hajar rahmallah brings the word awraq. You know, in Arabic grammar, there are two types of plural. So the one is jam'ul kathra. This is if something is more than 10. And the second is jam'ul qilla. This is something that is between 3 to 10. So both are plurals, but there is this kind of distinction in Arabic. So the word awraq is jam'ul kathra, meaning the condensation would be more than 10 pages long. However, Nukhbatul Fikr is much less than 10 pages, especially when one looks at the manuscript. Thus, it would have been better if Hafiz ibn Hajar rahmallah had to use the word waraqat to describe the small booklet. Now, a point to note here is that even though it is a small booklet, Nukhbatul Fikr is still an important and valuable addition to this field. Allama Radiyuddin Ibn al-Hanbali rahimahullah explained this beautifully by saying, فَصَارَتْ جَدِيرَةً إِذْ صَغُرَتْ حَجْمًا وَتَرَاءَتْ نَجْمًا لِكُلِّ أَثَرِيٍّ بِقَوْلِ مَنْ قَالَ وَالنَّجْمُ تَسْتَصْغِرُ الْأَبْصَارُ صُورَتَهُ وَالذَّنْبُ لِلطَّرْفِ لَا لِلنَّجْمِ فِي الصِّغَرِ. That a person regards a star to be rather small, but the fault is with the eye and not with the star. If you look at the star, it appears to be small, but you know how huge the stars are. So the fault is with your eyes, that when you are looking at it, it seems to be so small. But the star itself is extremely big. So therefore the same applies here, that this might seem to be a small booklet, but it's filled with so many pearls and it becomes so valuable. So these words, وَالنَّجْمُ تَسْتَصْغِرُ الْأَبْصَارُ صُورَتَهُ وَالذَّنْبُ لِلطَّرْفِ لَا لِلنَّجْمِ فِي الصِّغَرِ. These are the words of Mutanabbi. He mentions them in his Diwan. سميتها نخبة الفكر في مصطلح أهل الأثر. I named it نخبة الفكر في مصطلح أهل الأثر. So this was compiled in the year 812 Hijri. We discussed about the name previously. على ترتيب ابتكرته. I wrote it in such a sequence that I came up with. Ibn Hajar rahmallah says that he wrote this book and came up with a new sequence and order. And he mentions this after criticizing the sequence and orders of Imam Hakim rahimullah and Ibn Salah rahimullah. Thus, we will take this into account and take note of the author of this book and evaluate whether it really lives up to the claim of being in a perfect order. So Ibn Hajar rahmallah's objective was to revise the order, because although more than 2 centuries had passed since Ibn Salah rahmallah and many books were written based on his muqaddamah, no author focused on the order. So he uses the word ibtakartuhu. Now ibtikar means to originate something without a prior example. Allama al-Laqani rahmallah, he explains this word as follows: اخترعته من غير أن أسبق فيما أعلم إذ هو إيجاد شيء من سبق مثال. That I came up with it and there was no one before me who done a similar thing like this. So although Hafiz ibn Hajar rahmallah assumed that he came up with this order in his book, there is a book written by a scholar before him with this exact same order. That is, the order of the information was in the exact same sequence. So the author of that book is Ibn al-Nafis, who lived between 607 to 687 Hijri. And though he was more distinguished in medicine and physiology and surgery, he was also learned in the Islamic sciences. Ibn al-Nafis rahmallah named his book Al-Mukhtasar fi Ilmi Usul al-Ḥadīth. It is printed with the tahqiq of Sheikh Yusuf Zaidan. So Ibn al-Nafis rahmallah passed away around 125 years before Hafiz ibn Hajar rahmallah completed writing Nukhbah. Then he says, وَسَبِيلٍ إِنْتَهَجْتُهُ. So I also clearly explained it. Uses the word intahajtuhu. The word intihaj comes from the word nahjul amr. Allama al-Laqani rahmallah explains, أوضحته لسالكيه مبالغة في إيضاحه لا متكلفا له لما يخفى فهو افتعل من نهج الأمر وضح والمنهاج في الأصل الطريق الواضح. So he means that I clearly explained everything. مع ما ضممت إليه من شوارد الفرائد, in addition to the valuable pearls that I added. He uses the word فرائد. الفرائد جمع فريدة وهي الدرة. It means a pearl. واللؤلؤ اليتيمية التي لنفاستها وحسنها انفردت في ملك عظيم أو إقليم. So that's with regards to the word فرائد. And then وشرد البعير إذا نفر. So the meaning is that he added such precious points that are like expensive pearls which are hard to attain. وزوائد الفرائد, and extra benefits that I included. فرغب إلي ثانيا أن أضع عليها شرحا. He approached me for the second time and requested that I write a commentary that will solve the secrets. So here, by using the word رغب rather than the word سأل, there is a subtle indication that this time it was not a polite request. Rather, the person asked with more firmness and with more eagerness. وعبر يرغب دون سأل, إشارة إلى أنه سأل سؤالا آكد وأشد من الأول لما رآه من نفاسة الملخص وعزة وجوده في غير تلك الأوراق. The reason he asked in this way is that he was mesmerized and astonished at the great amount of detail and the valuable pearls that he found in the condensation, and hence he was so eager that the honorable author should share more. Now, explaining qualities of this commentary, he says that the commentary should be such that يحل رموزها, which solves the secrets. The word here, rumuz, is isti'ara. In Balagha you learned it means metaphorical, because the actual meaning of a ramaza is to indicate with the eyes. So the quality of this commentary should be such that يزيل تعقيد بعض ألفاظ عبارتها التي هي لخفاء دلالتها على المراد تشبيه الرمز الذي هو الإيماء بعين أو حاجب معه ولا يخفى ما فيه من الاستعارة التبعية. So that's the first quality. Then the next quality is وَيَفْتَحُ كُنُوزَهَا, and it unlocks its treasures. If the person who asked Hafiz ibn Hajar rahmallah for a summary was Shamsuddin al-Zarkashi rahmallah, then he passed away in the year 813 as we mentioned. So this was 1 year after Nukhba al-Fikr was written. Thus, although he made the request, he did not live to witness the culmination of this book. The book is merely a sadaqatul jariyah for him, but he did not live to read the commentary. ويوضح ما خفي على المبتدئ من ذلك, and this commentary should explain to a beginner that which is concealed. From this we understand that Hafiz ibn Hajar rahmallah's target audience when writing Nuzha an-Naḍar is the beginners in the field of Hadith. This book is written for a beginner. Alama al-Qani rahmallah said, وأقول المقصود بالذات كما نص عليه الشارح فيما مر بوضع هذه المقدمة وشرحها إنما هو المبتدئ. Now all these descriptions mentioned thus far could either be from the student. This will then show his high level of respect and his great wisdom, that instead of saying that he should explain what is difficult, he mentioned that the teacher should unlock its treasures. He could have came to Ibn Hajar and said that you wrote the small commentary, but it's difficult for me to understand, etc. So please elaborate on it and write something which is in more detail. But he used wisdom, he chose his words, and he said that please write for me something which will unlock the treasures of this book, and he used this type of wordings. Alternatively, these are the words of Hafiz ibn Hajar rahimahullah himself. So it's not from the student, rather Ibn Hajar is explaining the qualities of this book. In this case, he is not praising his own work and blowing his own horn. Rather, he is just mentioning the great bounty of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala upon him. هذا من باب التحدث بالنعمة أو لنصح الناس ليأخذوا العلم منه وعنه وهي إحدى صور يجوز فيها مدح الإنسان نفسه. So Ibn Hajar rahmallah says, فَأَجَبْتُهُ إِلَى سُؤَالِهِ, I duly complied and acceded to his request. Now when looking at this word, فَأَجَبْتُهُ إِلَى سُؤَالِهِ, initially in the text of Nukhbatul Fikr, the dhamir, the pronoun أَجَبْتُهُ, that ha, was going back to the first request to write something on the field of Ḥadīth, that is to write Nukhbatul Fikr. Yet here, in the commentary, the marja, the antecedent, is the second request. So look at the words of Nukhbatul Fikr. Ibn Hajar rahmallah mentions in Nukhbatul Fikr, فإن التصانيف في اصطلاح أهل الحديث قد كثرت وبسطت واختصرت فسألني بعض الإخوان أن ألخص له المهم من ذلك. So this here is talking about Nukhbatul Fikr. And thereafter he says فأجبته إلى سؤاله. So that means I responded to him with regards to this request of writing Nukhbatul Fikr. But now so in this sentence in Nukhbatul Fikr, the words ajabtu ila su'ali refers to Nukhbatul Fikr. But when merging the books together, these exact same words are now referring to the commentary, to Nuzha an-Naḍar. He's saying that فَأَجَبْتُهُ إِلَى سُؤَالِهِ, that I responded to his request of writing now Nuzha an-Naḍar. So that essentially means that a word of the original text that was written earlier in the year 812 is referring to a word of the commentary that was written later in 818 Hijri. So this is Ibn Hajar rahmallah's practice and method of amalgamating the two books. رجاء الاندراج في تلك المسالك, with the hope of being included in that category of illustrious scholars. His hope was that he can also be included in the category of Hadith scholars. And undoubtedly Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala fulfilled this request of his. So we also studying this book with the same hope that even though we are not fit, through the blessings of this book we are also hopeful that we will be upgraded to that noble class of elite scholars. He says, فَبَالَغْتُ فِي شَرْحِهَا فِي الْإِيضَاحِ وَالتَّوْجِيهِ وَنَبَّهْتُ عَلَى خَفَايَا زَوَايَاهَا. He says, hence I really went into detail in explaining and elaborating on it. And I informed concerning its hidden corners. At this point in the text, we can see how different scholars differ when typing the text of the book from the manuscript. In the print of Sheikh Muhammad Murabi and Tariq ibn Iwadullah, we have the word khabaya. So we read it now as khafaya, but they have the word khabaya. Whereas in the print of Sheikh Nuruddin Itr and Sheikh Rahili, they have the word khafaya. Similarly, regarding a word which comes in the next portion, in the print of Sheikh Muhammad Murabi and Sheikh Rahili, we have the words masalik. Whereas Sheikh Nuruddin Itr was using the exact same manuscript, typed the word as salik, without the meme at the beginning. Nevertheless, irrespective whether you assume the word to be khabaya or whether you consider the word to be khafaya, the meaning remains the same. It refers to hidden and then zawaya, corners, so hidden corners. Using the manuscript that has the word khabaya, Sheikh Waji'uddin al-Gujarati, he said, al-khabaya jam'u khabi'a wa hiya ma satura, wa zawaya jam'u zawiya. So this refers to all the intricate laws and difficult principles which are like in a hidden corner, it's difficult to uncover. لأن صاحب البيت أدرى بما فيه, because the owner of the house knows best what is in it. This is an adage and a proverb. It means that since Ibn Hajar rahmallah wrote the initial book, he will know best what he intended by the text. Despite others who attempted to explain the text in his very life, Hafiz ibn Hajar rahmallah felt that no one was doing justice to what he intended. For example, his teacher put the whole Nukhba in poetic form and called it ar-Rutba fi Sharh an-Nukhba. Then he wrote a commentary on it called Natijatun an-Naḍar. His son the son of the teacher, also wrote a commentary called Al-Ali al-Rutbah. However, Hafiz ibn Hajar rahmallah felt that he could explain his own text better. Now earlier, Hafiz ibn Hajar rahmallah praised the book of Allama ibn Salah rahimahullah, and he used the words and he said, فلا يحصى كم ناظم له ومختصر ومستدرك عليه ومقتصر ومعارض له ومنتصر. So the same words of praise which he used, as mentioned earlier, all those words also applies to this book of his. So we can also say that فلا يحصى كم ناظم له ومختصر ومستدرك عليه ومقتصر ومعارض له ومنتصر. Just as Ibn Salah rahmallah's book received great recognition, we can say that Hafiz ibn Hajar rahmallah, this book of his, also became the center of attention. Many scholars wrote abridged versions and commentaries and put it in poetic form, also raised objections against it and defended his book. For example, in a poetic form, this includes Ibn Hajar rahmallah's own student, Kamaluddin, or rather his own teacher, Kamaluddin Muhammad ibn Hassan at-Tamimi. Then with regards to the commentaries, this includes Allama Munawi rahmallah, Mullah Ali Qari rahmallah, and so many others who wrote commentaries on the book. With regards to objections, Radiyuddin al-Hanbali and Allama Qasim ibn Qutlubugha, they both raised objections on this book from time to time, and they refuted Ibn Hajar rahimahullah. But more importantly, many scholars who came after Ibn Hajar rahimahullah, they followed the views in this book, and they would not even look at those scholars before him who held different views. And we will explain on this when we come to chapters like Aziz and Shadh and Munkar, etc. Ibn Hajar rahmallah then briefly explains his methodology. He says, وَظَهَرَ لِي أَنَّ إِيرَادَهُ عَلَى سُورَةِ الْبَسْطِ أَلْيَقْ. It became apparent to me that it is better to elaborate in detail. So he felt that whilst writing this commentary, he will go in slightly more detail. وَدَمْجُهَا ضِمْنَ تَوْضِيحِهَا أَوْفَقْ. And an amalgamation of the two texts will be more suitable. Ibn Hajar rahmallah made damj, he integrated the text of Nukhba with the commentary of Nuzha. He combined the two books so well that one cannot differentiate between the initial text and the commentary. So sometimes he may even bring a mudaf in the matan in Nukhbatul Fikr, and the mudaf ilay is in Nuzhatul Nadhar in the commentary. The combination of these two texts in this method was something that drew unwarranted criticism against Ibn Hajar rahmallah. However, it is his book, so therefore he can do as he pleases. Both books then became as one book. If the publishers did not place any brackets or they did not create any distinction between the two texts, then it will be really difficult to distinguish between what is Nukhba and which forms part of Nuzha. He says, فَسَلَكْتُ هَذِهِ الطَّرِيقَةَ الْقَلِيلَةَ السَّالِكَ. That hence I treaded on this path which hardly anyone treads on. Like we said, the word salik is used in the sprint of Shaykh Nuruddin Itr, but others, they felt that the word in the manuscript is فَسَلَكْتُ هَذِهِ الطَّرِيقَةَ الْقَلِيلَةَ الْمَسَالِكَ. Ibn Hajar rahmallah is indicated that he adopted a rare and uncommon style in his methodology. The reason why hardly anyone adopts the style is because it is rather difficult, and a person has to be an expert to know exactly how to do it correctly. لِصُعُوبَتِهَا إِلَّا عَلَى الْمُتَمَكِّنِينَ فِي ذَلِكَ الْفَنِّ الْمَاهِرِينَ فِيهِ الْعَارِفِينَ بِهِ. To adopt the same style like what Ibn Hajar rahmallah adopted here, a person has to firstly know the science really well. He needs to be an expert and a master in it. فأقول طالبا من الله التوفيق فيما هنالك. And now Ibn Hajar rahmallah officially commences with the book. Inshallah we will commence in the next lesson. Until then, jazakumullahu khairan. Subhanallah wa bihamdi. Subhanakallahumma wa bihamdik. Nashhadu an la ilaha illa anta nastaghfiruka.